Okay, welcome to the MimeCast, and this week we have actor, writer, musician, all-around funny guy, and thoughtful political commentarian in his own right, Amos Glick.
Howdy, folks. Hi, Michael.
So, Amos, as I was telling you, that this isn't just about your time with the troupe; it's about your whole life, so that we can get to know you as an artist. So, where were you born? And why?
I was born in Austin, Texas.
Really? I did not know
that. Very thick Texas accent until I moved, which was on, someone's got a tape, or there was a tape, I don't know if someone still has it, of me and my southern drawl. But my dad was a professor. He's retired now, still kicking around, but retired. And he was at University of Texas there in Austin. He's a history professor.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know what position this guy had, this guy named John Silber, who became the president of Boston University, had some higher ranking position in Austin. And when he left, he took a bunch of professors with him. And my dad was one of them. So he went to BU and invited my dad to come there. And my dad had been, Massachusetts was familiar territory for my dad. He was a Cornell sandwich in between two slices of Harvard. So smart guy. Harvard undergrad, Cornell master's, PhD at Harvard. So he had been around the East Coast and particularly Massachusetts. So
was he from there?
No, Cleveland. He's from Cleveland. My mom is from Providence, which is not so far away from Boston.
Is that where they met?
What's that?
Is that where they met, in Boston?
Where did they meet? I think they met in New York City when my dad was getting his master's, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
I think that's when they met, and they married a year later. So it was like 63, somewhere around there.
What was your mother into? Was she also a teacher? Or?
No, very smart woman. She went to Swarthmore. So my parents I come from a family of pretty lofty academia.
What happened?
But, she had two kids early. I don't know if she started a career before she had children. I think she was getting her master's and did not finish that and ended up finishing it later. She's kind of a literature type person, but also an artist. She was a ceramicist, a potter for many years, and then, like her mother before her, became a painter and drawer, and that's what she's doing still today as her main, it doesn't bring in so much money, but it's what she does with her time and has been doing it very seriously to some recognition. And I love her stuff. There's one right behind me. That's hers.
Oh, shoot. It's not in focus. Oh, well.
It's all right.
What's her style? What is she?
She's very abstract, although, she'll do things that are, she'll do landscapes where you can recognize trees and houses, but it's still pretty abstract. I really like it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So they met in New York while you're, why was your mother in New York? Has she gone there for art or what?
I think she just moved there after college, kind of like people move to big cities after college. And she, if I remember correctly, she was, she was an editor in some fashion, having an English degree. She, is very facile with language. Oh, and for a long time, this is later, but she was a translator as well, since my dad's uber specialty is the history of science and technology in Spain.
Oh, wow.
Right. They went to Spain and lived there right when they got married for a year. And I think my sister was conceived there, actually. And then my mother learned Spanish, and because she's a literary type person and smart, she became bilingual and then started translating. I don't remember when she started. Definitely the 80s. It might have been even a little earlier than that. And she did some poetry. She did some, I don't think she did any novels, but maybe mostly historical texts, sort of dovetailing with my dad's stuff.
Wow. They sound like a great couple.
Yeah.
So they met in New York. They get married. They go to Spain. And you come along after they get to Texas?
Yes, I was born in Texas. So my sister was born in Cambridge when my dad was finishing up his PhD. Then he went to Texas, and then I was born in 67, and we left in 72. And even though my dad was working in Boston, my parents settled in very rural suburbs in this teeny little town, like literally, like must be 3,000 people or something or smaller around that, at least in the early 70s, called Medway, Massachusetts. Mm. And then in 7th grade, because of my dad's work, we all moved to Spain, me, my sister, and both my parents, where I did 7th grade. And when we came back, we moved to the next town over, Holliston, Massachusetts. So we stayed there. So I am a bit of a masshole.
Yeah, really. But where in Spain did you live?
We lived in Valencia for a year. I mean, just about a year.
Wow.
My whole 7th grade year plus, 6 weeks maybe. So like
that's 3 very different cultures. Going from Texas to Massachusetts to Valencia.
Yes. I mean, I had major culture shock moving to Spain for a number of reasons. The first of which was that because on recommendations from from friends, my parents decided they found this private school, which is, we'll get them into this cool private school, but it was a Catholic school.
Oh.
And I didn't speak Spanish at all when I arrived, like 0.
Wow.
So imagine going to school. Here you are, not even a religious Jew, but a secular Jew, but, a certain sense of Jewish identity.
Right.
And you end up, people are doing this stuff. They're taking communion once a week, or there was mass once a week that people went to. And I was just like, it's, a 12-year-old trying to fit in. So I'm sitting there going like this, taking the wafer. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Free cookies.
And finally, when I expressed to my parents that the whole thing was just confusing and uncomfortable, I was probably the only kid in the school excused from all religious activity.
Mm.
So religion class, I did not have to get a grade. I just sat there. And then the religious ceremonies that they did, I did not have to stand up when I could do whatever I wanted, basically. I mean, I couldn't light fire to the place, but...
Right, yeah. Now, did that make you... How was that for the other students? Were they already like, well, he's the weirdo because he doesn't even speak Spanish? Or did it just further isolate you, or what?
I ended up making really good friends. It was tough, and there was a class bully who really, and for some reason, there were these like tandem desks, I don't know if those exist in the States even, because I never had one here, but there were like these tandem desks. So like even if you moved the whole desk somewhere, it was 2 desks connected to each other. Uh-huh. And he was my partner, this fucking bully. Sorry, I swore. And he would do all these crazy things, like he would take a ballpoint pen and rub it really hard on the desk to get friction and get it heated up, and then he'd stick it on my arm, but the teacher couldn't see, and it would burn me, and I'd scream. So I'd get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And then he would eat his scabs. Very weird guy.
What is that? Elena knew a guy who ate his scabs in high school. Are they tasty?
Oh, no, I'm wrong. It wasn't his scabs. He would do this weird thing where he would roll his fingers on his arms and sort of gather dead skin. This is so gross. I'm sorry.
That's worse.
And then eat it. Yeah.
That's worse than eating your scabs. And he was
my bully.
And at least he didn't make you eat his scabs.
I ended up making one close friend in particular who I'm still in touch with a couple of these guys today, mostly in part because my parents, who have kept going back to Spain, and I've been back a few times too. In fact, they had a house there for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Way out in the countryside. But my parents got an apartment in Valencia. I was over doing something in Europe. I was working in Vegas, but I was over in Europe visiting some friends, and I popped over to Valencia. It just so happened to be the 30th anniversary of what would have been those guys' graduation from 8th grade, and I was in 7th grade with them. So I went to the graduation, and it was a trip, man. It was, speaking Spanish, trying to remember old stories. I only recognized like 4 people out of like the 50 that were there. I mean,
was the bully there?
No.
Off in the corner.
No, he wasn't. But I know I asked about him, and I don't remember what people said about him.
But
it was, huh?
He was the mayor.
That would be awesome. I have no idea what happened to him. But
wow,
that was really fun.
So I was just out of curiosity going back. Do you remember any of your little childhood in Texas? And wait a minute. So you ended up with a thick Texas drawl, but your parents weren't from there. So you just picked it up from friends in school?
Here's what's funny. So my sister has a bit of a story behind her, so there may be some explanation cognitively for this. But so she lived in Texas as long as I did and was more older than I was.
Yeah.
So I had an accent because that's where I learned to talk, and I was in some sort of preschool. And then we moved to Massachusetts, where everybody around me, Park the car and have a yard, wicked hard slap shot. I am not going to pay a lot for this muffler kind of thing. And they must have canceled out, although some people tell me that I do have a little bit of a Massachusetts thing. And my sister actually has it a little bit. She has a little way more of a tinge of the Massachusetts than I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I don't remember much from, I have, just little snapshots of memories. In my, this is true for everybody who goes back and, because I was at an improv festival in Texas and went and visited the house that we lived in.
Wow.
And I was certain that the backyard and the driveway were this steep. And I mean, they were literally like this. Because I remember driving my big wheel down the driveway and almost hitting the garage door because I couldn't stop. It was going so fast. And all these little memories, but I don't know if they're dreams, memories. I couldn't tell you.
There's a point where it all kind of blends together. I have memories from being a child and running with my sister in Los Angeles. We went out and we were like poking holes in some sticks, poking sticks in a hole in the ground. And these beetles came out. Both of us remember thousands of beetles coming out of the ground and us running from them like it was a monster movie. We both clearly remember that. But there's no way that could have happened.
Right,
I
thousands.
think.
Well, you could have opened up some sort of nest of baby beetles or something.
Maybe.
Thousands? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird. It's weird. So sometimes those stories you keep telling yourself, that difference between memory and imagination as a kid kind of blend together until who knows what the hell happened when we were kids. So you, by the time you get to middle school, where are you? You're in Spain, and then you moved back for the 8th grade, back to the States?
Yeah, I did. Here, another part of my culture shock and craziness of going to Spain was that I was always the oldest kid in my class. I'm born in September. So depending on where you start, you can be
too old or too young.
Middle or older. Yeah. And so my parents took me I just finished 5th grade, and they put me in 7th. So I skipped 6th grade in a new language and Christian, Catholic.
And Catholics.
So that was strange. But yeah, middle school started, I skipped the first year of middle school and did 7th grade, and then I came back to Holliston, did 1 year of middle school, and then went to Holliston High School.
Okay. Yeah, that's
a lot.
That
was also some culture shock because before I had left to go to Spain, I was at a private school where each class was like 12, each grade was 12 or 15 kids.
Oh, wow.
Really small, super progressive, super kind of vestige of hippiedom kind of. But still super preppy with lacrosse and all that stuff. And soccer. And then I got to Massachusetts where people were like, you want to fight in the parking lot after, 8th period or whatever. And it was totally different. I mean, not to say that it was horribly violent.
It wasn't that every day.
It's the middle of the suburbs, come on.
Right. But more kids in class.
What's that?
More kids in class.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my home room had 25, 30 people.
Wow.
In both middle school and high school. So I think my grade was about 200, 250 kids.
I don't, because I'm only a city kid.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. As far as I could tell, there were 1 million kids in my school.
Right.
One thing that's interesting, though, is, everybody that I've talked to, that there's this commonality, which is moving a lot as a kid. Whether it's because the parents were in the military or they were immigrants or something that happened where the person that I'm interviewing went through a period in their lives where they had to fit in one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
And some people it was later, like with Holmes, his parents moved around a little bit, And then when he gets into the Navy, then he's all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
But most people, it's like, as a little kid, they're like, yeah, then we moved here, then we moved there, then we moved here. So I think that's just part of being an actor, really, is you develop those muscles early of having to have a persona that you have to put on.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you're forced into it, and then other times it's very conscious. I remember that. I remember, having certain, maybe being bullied a little bit and not understanding why I was the target of that. And I was by no means the only one, and I understood that. It wasn't like I was all alone, and I was also very, very gregarious, and I had a lot of friends. So, yeah, I got picked on, but I wasn't tortured, in that way, or lonely. But I was conscious, I remember, especially, more towards middle school and stuff like that, of like angling maybe to try to be. And I think that kind of awareness in my head that I can, even if I don't succeed, I can try, and that's an acting muscle.
Yeah. Were you aware of trying to use any comedy or humor?
I knew that I was funny. I was the class clown.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I discovered it, there's one thing about, kids just laughing together. And then there's another thing where you kind of hold the room and you kind of do an act. And I started doing several things like that. And I even had some quote unquote writing partners from very young.
Wow.
We would come up with routines and we would repeat them for people. And it wasn't like we came up with routines. We came up with stuff that just made us laugh. And then we would go show it to people. And then, at summer camp, I remember there was this council fire, they called it. And I don't know if it was a paper bag skit or something, but I ended up in a position where it made sense that I would do a Julia Child impression.
Like you do.
And
Like you do. It happens. Yeah.
And I did it, and I killed. I mean, I was able to come up with fake French names for wines and regions in France. Like, I guess I had watched it enough that I just had the format and banter down, and the impression, I guess, for a 10-year-old was pretty damn good. I mean, college age and older counselors just congratulating me afterwards like I had just won a prize or something like that. And I think that was the first time I realized that I liked comedy and performing.
So how old were you at that point?
That was 10 years old, 1978. Mm-hmm. So I was 10, almost 11.
Wow. And you had your writing partners at the time? How did that work out? How did you?
Mostly parody songs or even original songs, almost always about sex. One about my sister, which was a very mean song. Mm. And people, even counselors, will still, because of the chorus, which I will not sing, still come up to me and are like, I can't believe you did that, man. Like, but they still there's a smile behind it.
Huh. Could just do me a favor. Could you move yourself a little bit over just to make sure you're in the middle of the screen? Yeah.
Sure.
Only because
because right now I'm in front of the camera, but like now the iPad is way over there, so like I'm not even. It's just odd.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's cool.
So, that's cool. So that means you're still kind of in touch with some of the counselors?
Yeah, counselors and campers. This summer camp ended up being a kind of the foundational event in my life, and the community where I really started to understand who I was apart from being someone's son and just a kid who lived on a street and went to a school and had a dog. Like, really, the environment really let you be free, but it also kind of was like, okay, who are you? What do you want to do? What's up with you? Like, the place took an interest in me in a way that sometimes families forget because you're so busy doing stuff, right?
Mm. What was the camp?
And my sister, which I alluded to before, she has cognitive issues and was born that way, and she demanded a lot of attention in the family. Mm. And it was really difficult on all of us, but especially my parents. I mean, she was a real tantrum taker and stuff like that. And turned out that part of her tantrum stuff turned out to be very small seizures, but we didn't find that out until she was a teenager.
Ooh, that's tough.
But in any case, this place, Farm and Wilderness Camps, was a huge release to me and a resource. And that's where I kind of first bumped into Bread and Puppet and also some improv and theatrical ritual training from some counselors and stuff like that. So it kind of reinforced or not reinforced because I was nowhere near oriented towards theater yet, but it definitely planted some seeds.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many summers did you go there?
I was a camper from 78 to 84. Took one summer off, so I think that was 5 summers. And then I was a counselor in 85 and then in 89 and 90. And have since, like in the past few years, gotten very involved in fundraising and reacquainting myself with the place. And I had always been in touch with a handful of people, but I'm in touch with a lot more. And now I've been going back once a year for family camp, which, a lot of camps have, and they've got one too. And it's weird. It's good and strange to do. As a 52-year-old man to go back, I'm single. I don't have any kids. I go with friends. They bring their kids, and I'm just like this guy. I mean, it ends up working out. After feeling awkward for a few minutes, being one of the only single people there, it just becomes one big family. That's what I call it, family camp.
So you were going there in the summers. Were you doing any of your performing outside, like at school? It's still at school and stuff, or
I was not interested, or when I was in at Holliston High School, some of that rubbed off on me, and I was an athlete. I played ice hockey, and I was not very good, but I played it, and I played a lot of it, and that was kind of my. I have my homeroom friends or whatever, my friend, not homeroom friends, but like my friends who live near me, and we just sort of gravitated to each other. Some of them played hockey, but not all of them. And then I have my hockey world. And, theater and art was for fags and pussies. Pardon, I don't want to offend anybody, but that was the training I had. And so I never really thought of it as an option. Funnily enough, after a really wonderful summer, at Farm Wilderness when I was older, a teenager, and I'd started to learn guitar. So that's a little artsy, right?
Oh, so you didn't start learning until pretty late.
15.
Oh, okay.
I came back from that summer. I started going to school, Holliston High School, and I started flunking out. Started getting a D in science, which was one of my better subjects.
Wow. And
I was skipping class and going to the nurse's station office and just saying that I didn't feel well and just laying there and napping like every day. And even I was aware that this was just stupid and a waste of time. So I went to my parents and I was like, I need to get the hell out of here. This institution is not doing me any favors. I spend these wonderful summers doing things that I like and being who I want to be. And when I come back here, I am, ostracized, not ostracized, but I'm made fun of for being more loving and open and considerate and not Republican. Not cheering on war, which would at the time, what was that? That was when we invaded Grenada. Yeah. And the whole school was like, USA. I was like, I don't know. Yeah. And so I transferred to this very bohemian school called the Cambridge School of Weston that has some illustrious alumni. Very small, though, private school, through a family friend, someone who had gone to that other private school that I went to as a kid. And I found out about it, and immediately started taking like sculpture classes, photography, theatrical lighting was my first theater course, and then I started trying out for stuff, and then that was all she wrote. I mean, I was off to the races. That's where the theater started.
So were you were kind of searching for something. What was it that hooked you about theater?
I don't know. I mean, I think the comedy element of I had a sense that I was performing when I did that, and the comedy got more and more a part of who I was as I became a teenager. And I was also by that time not thinking that I would go this way, but I was watching Saturday Night Live from the late 70s and Monty Python's Flying Circus, all that. I mean, almost every person, if not theater person of my age, grew up on that stuff. Yeah. And my father, from a very young age, had always shown me he had reels film reels of Three Stooges, Marx Brothers,
Uh-huh.
mostly those two. And we watched a lot of those. I watched a lot of those at home on a projector before I ever saw them on TV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
So I think it was just putting two and two together, and I don't even know if I think one of the first things I did, I mean, I had very small parts in whatever high school productions I tried out for, and then directed a short piece by Woody Allen. But I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and there was no training. It was just like, students direct. And I was like, I'll do that. That sounds, I loved Woody Allen at the time, and I found this one-act play by his called, what was it called? It'll come to me. I can't think of it right now.
And I probably got it here somewhere.
Yeah. Death Knocks. That's what it's called.
Death Knocks is good. Yeah.
And, I'm sure I did not do that very well. I didn't know how to talk to actors or interpret a script, really. But I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I liked it. I think I liked the teamwork of it, and I remember I think I was literally handyman or helper number 2 in the pajama game.
Uh-huh.
And I invented so much shtick. I was busy the whole time. Like, I was supposed to just be standing there and then sing when I sang. There was no blocking for me. So I just started, I was behind like a worker's table in the factory, and I was going up and down, going down and crawling and popping up over here. No one told me to do that. And I had so much fun doing that. And I think it was just it came so naturally. And I was fucking around. So I wasn't even doing what I was supposed to be doing on stage. It was sort of the actor to actor backstage. I guess I liked the community of it too. I've never really thought about it till right now. I've never really thought, why did I gravitate towards theater? It's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like if you were already, part of it is already doing performing and getting the laughs, getting that kind of attention. And if you're, and gravitating towards comedy, because also if part of your relationship with your dad, it sounds like, was sitting around and watching these films and watching comedy.
Oh, yeah.
So it can give you it does for me, because I not so much Three Stooges as much as Marx Brothers and Monty Python, So when I'm doing that, I just watched Night at the Opera the other night, again, to go back, because that was stuff I did with my father also. And so, growing up, and so it does give me a kind of family feel, or watching as much Monty Python as I can, because that's what me and my father and my sister did.
That's Monty Python with your dad. That's cool. I'm sure my dad liked it, but I don't know why we didn't watch it together. I think we may have discussed it. And he actually had, I can't remember the name of the guy, some bricklayer routine, British comic before Monty Python, and before what's his name?
That's before
it was Dudley Moore and whatever his partner's name was.
Marty Feldman had a show where he did a lot of physical comedy and stuff. And before that,
I'm talking about this. Actually, these are albums like from a radio show. I can't.
Probably Goon Show then.
Maybe. I think it was more of a duo or a single guy. I'll have to ask my dad. But I remember listening to those as a very young kid too, and being intrigued with the craft of that style of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, you have that, to have that depth of history about it, where it's not like you're just doing it just to get attention, but that it means something, that comedy means something, which I think a lot of people don't get. It's super serious.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that when I was goofing around, although I know, I mean, that, as I was going to say, I don't think that I was super conscious of like, oh, I watched the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers, so now I'm doing this. But I know that I mimicked some of those guys' stuff, like with the Harpo with his leg going up or something similar. I'm sure I did. And then all the sounds that Curly and Shemp used to make, I know that and then everybody was in my school and camp was always mimicking Monty Python.
Yeah. Well, it just becomes part of your language. It becomes normal. Yeah, like Harpo grabbing somebody's hand and doing that. I did that as a kid too, where you just like, and if the person if the person knows what you're doing, that you're doing the Marx Brothers, it's funny. If they don't know, it's still funny.
Oh, yeah. I think I like that even better.
Yeah, but they're just like, what the hell? So, yeah, so that having that sense of, I was watching some documentary, the one by Rowan Atkinson on physical and visual comedy. Have you ever seen that one?
I have not.
It's brilliant. It is really good. And he talks about the insanity that the Marx Brothers would bring in any situation, where it's just like there are no rules all of a sudden. And with Monty Python, it was in the whole thing is that the world is expanded so that anything can happen in any moment. Yeah. And once you get that into yourself, you can never lose it. And so you end up doing that in life, but also in your comedy, and the stuff that I've seen you do with the Mime Troupe and outside of the Mime Troupe, where it's like the sense of being just like an alien almost and having no rules, so that keeps the moment dramatically alive, not just comedically, but dramatically alive. So it's really cool when I've seen you do like just the clowning or even working with other theater companies, that you always have that immediacy, which is great.
Because we're talking about childhood, I'm now remembering from 8th grade, we used to go on these ski trips every Friday. We'd get on a bus and go to a teeny little bump 30 minutes away and just ski down the hill. And we were always joking around, me and my friends. And it's like I saw an opportunity and I just went for it to make them laugh. And it was this woman was there from a news station. She was interviewing some kid. And, it was very Monty Python. I just walked right between them and said something stupid and kept walking. And she cut the camera and came after me and just chewed my ass off. She was like, I'm a professional! How dare you? And, of course, she was completely right. I thought I was being Monty Python, and she was like, you're an imbecile.
Those two things can overlap.
Well.
So when you got out of high school, were you now you were hooked on theater, or were you still like, well, I'm going to be I don't know?
I was I don't knowing a lot. I had decided at the urging of a really close friend who was definitely going to do this, to join him and go on a youth group excursion, year-long excursion to Israel.
Wow.
And for some reason, I'm not for some, it kind of makes sense, a guy who's searching and yearning and figuring himself out, and this whole Jewish thing has been a part of my life, but not really. Here was an opportunity to kind of double down on the Jewish thing in a big way, and kind of get to come to terms with it and understand it. And having come from this very crunchy camp that was kind of like a work camp of sorts, we had very ambitious. It was a very minimalist camp, so there was a lot of work involved, and so it was kind of like a kibbutz. There was farms, there was chores, and it was hardcore, building major structures and clearing trails and digging huge holes for outhouses and stuff like that, like massive projects, and cutting down trees and sectioning them and splitting them and all this stuff. And so when, learning about Moshav and kibbutz, these intentional communities in Israel, all of a sudden the whole package just became interesting to me. So I went to Israel, and I deferred my college for a year. I had already gotten into, by the way, this camp has Quaker roots, and I went to Earlham College, which is a Quaker college. No surprise there. A very small Quaker school in Indiana.
So now being in Israel, you were there for the whole year?
Yeah, about 10 months.
Yeah. So what was that like in terms of another culture shock, I would think?
Yeah, hugely. And it was great. I mean, I really did sort of get to sort of steep in some Jewishness, and there's something, yes, I was aware of anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, and people had called me Jew and thrown pennies at me in Holliston High School. In the cafeteria, people would throw pennies at me and laugh, and I had no idea what the fuck was going on. It was because they knew I was Jewish, and they thought I would want to collect, I'm a cheap Jew who would they wanted to watch me pick up a penny. And there was very soft anti-Semitism, almost loving anti-Semitism, in that when they would pick sports teams, my good friends, when it got to me, everybody was called by their last name to go on a team, and I was always the Jew. I'll take the Jew. And I didn't mind it. I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
But it is, looking back on it, it's a little strange. But so being in a place, I remember thinking this very strongly, like going into the bathroom and looking at the urinal and the little stamp at the bottom of the urinal where the pea cake sometimes is, was in Hebrew. And I'm like, holy fucking shit, the toilets are Jewish and they're probably made by Jews. Jews make toilets. Jews make that barbed wire fence. Like just sort of coming to grasp that my otherness was that there was some strength that I could get from it, I guess, and that, that we weren't just people who were fodder for ovens and jokes. We could build a society. Now, then there's the whole politics of the society, and I for sure started to get into that and understand what was going on politically there. And
right. What year were you there?
I was there in 85, 86.
Mm.
Kahana, I went to a Americana rally, a pro-Americana rally, but I went with some peaceniks and we sang peace songs and we had rocks thrown at us.
Politics.
And I went there kind of with this Zionist, like very soft Zionism, like, oh yeah, maybe I should move to Israel. Maybe I should join the Jewish homeland, or I should go join the army and protect the Jews. And by the end of the year, I was totally not about that at all. I was not a Zionist. And,
So how did that affect, like, I mean, how did your parents feel about you moving to Israel?
I think my mother was just afraid that I might get killed. But they had been to Israel. They visited Israel before they got married or earlier in their marriage or something like that. And my dad may have even gone to Israel earlier. And back then in the 40s and 50s, Jews just supported Israel carte blanche. I mean, the whole world did.
Yeah.
And sent money and did whatever they could. But I think they were fine with me going and at peace with it. And I had a really good time for the most part. There were some bad times as well. And the program itself was not that great. There were, and the culture of the program was not what I was hoping it would be. It was way more mainstream and people who wanted to party and hang out. And I was a little bit more, coming from this camp of like, let's roll up our sleeves and do shit. Mm-hmm. And there were times when we got separated out into little groups to do stuff where we could choose to do shit like that. And part of the program was around volunteering, like on a little, like AmeriCorps type thing, but for Israel, obviously. And that was cool, although it was unstructured, so there was a lot of wasted time. But
were there, like in this group, were there other high school or gap kids who were from around the world?
Oh, it was all people my age. It was all people who had just finished high school.
Mm-hmm. And were they all from the States?
All over the U.S., a couple from Puerto Rico. But the Puerto Ricans were not, there were two separate sections. There was my section, which was more of the heavier emphasis on kibbutz and experiential stuff. And then there was more like you're basically doing a college year, kind of way more mainstream and way more partying, and people who ended up, their whole thing, that culture was let's join a fraternity as soon as we get back to the U.S. and do keg stands and stuff.
Woo.
Totally different culture. But even mine was a little bit like that, but not as much. The kids definitely had a more intellectual, artistic bent on my program.
Well, I mean, I figured whatever, after having been in school, and having a gap year, I'm sure a lot of people wanted to cut loose, or at least define who they were, or think they were doing that. Whether with hard work or with partying or extra studying or digging trains or whatever.
Yeah, it certainly helped to, it definitely created a lot of thoughts and fodder for journal writing for me. There's no doubt.
Now you were talking
to figure shit out. What?
In school and in Spain and at camp, you had a lot of friends that you still kind of have. Do you still have friends from the kibbutz?
Yeah, a much smaller group, because as I said, the culture wasn't, 100% match for me. But there were some people, the closer friends that I have, like there's actually about 5 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a group of 4 or 5 of us started communicating more heavily, although I had been in touch with one of them constantly. You've met him, actually. My friend who was a doctor, I'm sure you've met him. He's been to a gazillion Mime Troupe shows. He lives in the Bay Area.
Okay.
But other people from other parts of the country, we started going on trips together and hanging out, mostly since I lived in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So after I left the Bay Area.
Wow.
So yeah, we're very close. And a lot of my quarantine projects, I've got cat hair on my shoulder. A lot of my quarantine projects, like recording, doing everybody doing their own part of a song and splicing it together, has been with that group of people.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've been good. I have friends from all pockets of my life. Literally, I really do. I have at least one from each episode, except Texas.
Yeah, they're still dealing with how steep the driveway is. So when you came back to the States, what were you? Did you go straight to college? And why did you pick Earlham?
I picked Earlham because I had some ideas of colleges. I had a really bad experience with my college counselor. I came into her with a list of colleges, and granted, a lot of them were really good schools, and some of them were probably a reach for me, but not all of them. And even the really good ones, I didn't have horrible grades. I was like a B+ student.
Mm-hmm.
And I had good extracurriculars and stuff like that. But my SATs weren't that good. But she basically said there was another kid who was an acting student or an acting guy with me at the school, who was one of my good friends from high school. And let's say his name is, Dirk Wickstein. She said, "You're no Dirk Wickstein, Amos," in reference to my college list.
Jeez.
And that just sort of deflated me, because she was supposed to be my partner, right?
Yeah.
And so I picked Santa Cruz. UC Santa Cruz became one of my top choices. I don't remember why. I just remember reading about it and liking it. And then I went to a presentation by Earlham at a local Quaker meeting house, and they started singing all these songs. These students who came along with the presentation started singing all the songs that I grew up singing at this camp. And I was like, that's it, I'm going here. Based on that, didn't visit the campus, didn't apply to any of the schools that I visited. I think I was going to apply early decision to Santa Cruz, and the early decision for Earlham was earlier, the deadline. So I applied for that and found out before the Santa Cruz one was due that I got in. So I just said, I'm going there.
Cool.
Path of least resistance in some ways. Really good choice, though. Perfect choice for me, actually.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like? Now you'd already lived away from your parents.
Yes.
So that wasn't as big a thing, I would think.
It was good, and it was hard. I mean, I did not know how to write a paper, as many people when they go to college learn, and I didn't know how to do research. Even though high school tries to teach you that, I just couldn't pay attention.
What was your major? What was your major in college?
That's the thing about why it was great. I was recruited by a biology professor to become a biology major because I took an intro course, and this was one of the best ways of teaching. It was taught by 3 people, so the lectures changed every day, the voice, which is really great. This was a fun class for them to teach. They loved it. So there was lots of joking around. There were lots of presentations. Like on the chapter in genetics, there was a big rumor. Watch out, on genetics, they make all the boys take a bucket and go masturbate so they can get some sperm, and we can do experiments with it for genetics. And sure enough, we come in for that day of lecture. It was on the syllabus, genetics. We come in. One of the professors brings in a bucket and some paper towel and puts it on the counter, and they never reference it once. But they were aware of the rumor and played along. It was awesome. And so that was the vibe of the class, that it was funny and that it was exciting and fun. The way they tag team like that and boosted each other's, if they weren't lecturing, they were in the audience kind of heckling or lending fodder. And I loved this course, and I ate it up. It was my first introduction to sort of understanding sort of ecology, I guess. It was eco-bio, introduction to ecological biology. It was such a great course, and I just never looked back. I was a full-on bio major. Tried to get a minor in theater, but ended up just not piecing together enough credits.
But
I did a ton of theater in college.
Now,
ton of theater.
So they did have a theater department.
Oh yeah, and improv.
Oh, they had an improv class?
It was a class, and we formed a troupe. And I loved that course. I did it twice. I became the TA the second time around. And this is the funny thing. I did 2 Shakespeare plays in college, which is a lot because you're only there for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
They were both comedies. I did Twelfth Night and Midsummer Night's Dream, and those are the only 2 that I've done professionally. I did different parts each time. So that's cool.
Wow. So now when you were were you thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be a biologist when you were in college?
I didn't know. I knew that I wanted to be a performer, and I was already in high school. I had formed a band. In college, I formed a band and was playing music regularly, and was very interested in activist arts, and I became very involved in environmental stuff and recycling and Earth Day stuff, and I was always in charge of the performance aspect or the art aspect of it.
What kind of music did you guys play?
Oh, you know me, I'm a deadhead. So it was folk rock, a little bit of funky, folky stuff, hippy dippy with a little bit of punk as far as like the Violent Femmes thrown in for good measure. Mm-hmm. I listened to a lot of stuff, but I mean, I'm sure it just, a lot of the covers and stuff like that were, songs that I had learned at camp, which half the times were Bob Dylan songs or the Beatles and stuff like that.
Were you doing any of your own stuff yet? Or again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, because you talked about the response that you get from an audience doing comedy.
Yeah.
But how different is it to get it, and what do you get back from when you do your own song?
Well, it's so interesting because, I've always kind of gone back and forth between bands and music and theater. And I remember making the decision in San Francisco that I was going to focus on being a professional actor and not on being a professional, full-on touring musician and stuff like that, because the music was so much more personal. And I had a harder time being rejected for that, especially if you write the piece.
Yeah.
And at least at the time, I wasn't writing my own theater. It didn't hurt as bad to be rejected for doing words that someone else had written and someone else had directed you in. Even though I was fully responsible for my performance, getting a bad review or it being obvious when the audience is not into it, it's not a good feeling, but it doesn't hurt as much as singing a song that you labored over and having it very clearly miss the mark or get ignored. Or
does not land in the way you want it to.
Right. Now, that being said, a lot of my music, especially early on, was comedy. So even though my first bands were 50% comedy. You saw the Bastard Brothers, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like that, but a more juvenile version of it, although that was quite juvenile, if I say so myself.
Yeah. So when you were in college, so I wonder, like, your major is ecobiology, and you're doing all of these plays. Was there any, like, did you ever get a feeling from your parents, like, he's going to be a biologist and this is going to be great? Did they ever express to you the direction they thought?
No. I mean, no major vibe either way. They were just happy if I was happy.
Oh, nice.
And so in some ways, not enough support and direction and advice or whatever. And in other ways, they weren't overbearing. So I really had the freedom to choose. In my mind, I was going to get a degree in something that I could fall back on, science. And, I could always teach or whatever. But I knew that I was going to, from the get-go, as soon as I graduated, that I was going to pursue acting. And while I was at Earlham, this is what's the connection to the mime troupe in a way. I saw the Wildflower Dance Order. You know who they are? Out of Oakland?
No.
They had a variety of names: Wildflower Dance Order or Wildflower Dance Brigade.
Oh, there's Dance Brigade that I know.
I don't know if they're related.
Oh.
The Dance Brigade is the same as the Wildflower. This is 30 years ago, so I can't remember, right? But in any case, I saw them, and they were fabulous and had a political bent, this troupe of dancers. And then there was another theater group, and I wish I could remember the name, because they were a lot like the mime troupe, but they were not the mime troupe. They were some other social issue political theater company with a, not as polished stage production, and even their style of acting didn't have the what's the word I'm thinking of? The intent that the mime troupe style has. Theirs was more just sort of like, they weren't as well trained as other actors, or they were just very casual. But it spoke to me. It was like a different type of theater, because I had been doing these, theatrical, serious productions. And then in my attempt to get my theater minor, I took a history of theater course, and the course was called History of Theater up to the 1500s or something like that. So it was like Greek, ancient Greek and Roman stuff. And then at some break in class or something, I was like, what was going on in the 1960s? Oh, Bread and Puppet. I know Bread and Puppet. I've been to Vermont with the Farm World. San Francisco Mime Troupe. Read it, and I was like, oh, I got to do that. I got to go do that. It described the style and how they got in trouble and stuff like that. The early R.G. Davis days, and I don't know how much of the history was in it. I bet I could find that book. I might still have that theater history text. But and so I remember I tried. You know what a MacArthur grant is?
Yeah.
I was going to get my idea, which I never applied for because I just couldn't get my shit together, was to study political theater all over the world. So I had the Wildflower Dance Order. I had the Mime Troupe, which I hadn't contacted you guys yet, but I think I contacted the Wildflower people. I did some reading, and I found about these different places in other parts of the world, and was starting to contact people and just get my shit together, and then it all fell apart. But that was I had an intent to connect myself to the Mime Troupe that early. And as soon as I moved out to the Bay Area, I started a band, got on an improv class, and spoke with Tori at the Mime Troupe to volunteer. And I missed my first day of volunteering because I got arrested at the protests against the Iraq War, to which she was like, "Oh, cool.
Yeah, really. Put that on the resume."
we'll be in jail. We were in jail with you.
Yeah. So when you got out of school, did you just move to the Bay Area, or did you you were talking about, so that was it.
I had a girlfriend in college, and we wanted to spend as much time together as possible. And my friends were doing summer school at Yale. One guy from my camp, from Farm and Wilderness, was doing summer school. And he, since he met my guy who I went to Israel with through me, they were living in a house together. I knew that. They said, we have an extra bedroom. So me and my girlfriend and her dog moved there. She waitressed. I worked at the Yale Forestry Laboratory and the Yale Recycling Center. And we spent the summer together. Working at that lab was really cool. Like that, I could have got a job there, man, if I wanted to stay in Connecticut. Then she had already I was hell-bent on going to the Bay Area for the reasons I mentioned, and the Grateful Dead, since I knew the Dead were housed there. And she was hell-bent on teaching. So we knew we were going to try and make it work, but our lives were calling us.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got to the Bay Area, beyond that summer, I knew I was going to the Bay Area. A woman who had been my counselor, although she's only a few years older than me, at the stupid Jewish camp that I had to go to before I went on the Israel program, she inherited a house from her father and had 2 rooms. And me and my buddy, the other guy who went to Israel with me, who was at Yale Summer School, we moved out to the Bay Area together.
Wow. That's so Convenient. Where was the house? Where were you at?
Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
right off of Solano Avenue. I worked at the Just Desserts on Solano Avenue
Oh.
for a long time. Well, not a long time, for 3 months. And then I moved into the city
Mm-hmm.
and transferred to the Church Street store where I worked for a number of years and started, I was full on with the mime troupe from that era on for 17 years, except for like 8 months that I lived down here in LA in the late 90s.
So you got here, started, what year? I'm trying to,
I came in 90.
90, right.
So that summer I took, it was too late for the summer. Wait, what am I saying?
I don't know.
So I got there in September 90. Yeah, so it was 91, summer workshop 91 I took. And I had already been volunteering and hanging out a little bit before that. I might not have met you till the summer, but I had met Dan Shumley and
Right.
Ellen, of course, and Tori was sort of outreach central.
Yeah. Yeah, she was.
And,
so were you thinking at that time, I'm going to work with this company for a while?
Yes. I don't know if someone told me this before or after, or if I invented this myself. I don't think I did. Either someone told me this and I made it happen at the Mime Troupe, or someone told me about it and I was like, that's what happened to me at the Mime Troupe, or it happened at the Mime Troupe and I coined the phrase, but I don't think I did. And that is, especially in theater, or not even for theater, for anything, make yourself, oh God, I can't think of the English word. I'm spacing out on language.
Indispensable.
Indispensable wherever you go. And
Yes.
I remember my goal. I don't know if you remember this, but I used to bring my guitar to setups. And when we were done setting up, I would run around improvising songs. And I knew I was good at it. So my goal was to make each one of you laugh. And I was like, if I make them laugh, they'll remember who I am. And then I just worked my ass off in the truck and in the loading. And you guys, the Mime Troupe, was always so grateful, and I'm sure still is, when people just vomit up their time and energy to help, because it's such hard work setting up that damn stage and living on the shoestring budget that you guys live on. And so I felt that, and I really liked that feeling. I liked the feeling that, it's like part of it was I made myself indispensable, and I tried to fit in culturally with jokes and being funny and making people laugh. But you guys needed me and wanted to need me and were grateful for me. And it's very rare when that happens at a place where you want it to happen.
Yeah.
And where it feels right. And right after my first summer at the Mime Troupe, I was still, I'm an East Coast guy. I'm still thinking about moving back east. I went I drove 72 hours in a row after my internship with the Mime Troupe to arrive for the first day of my summer internship with Bread and Puppet.
Oh, wow.
And I did, I don't know, I guess like 2/3 of a summer with the Mime Troupe, and then bolted after the workshop was done and went and did whatever the Bread and Puppet thing was doing. And that's a whole different ballgame. Really fun, totally cool experience, but I was one of many minions, and they were so ingrained in their structure and in their thing, and there was inner turmoil in the company. A bunch of women who thought a lot of the stuff they were doing was sexist revolted that year at a big dress rehearsal, and basically they staged a protest in the dress rehearsal. It was amazing. But it was tumultuous, and it wasn't, I guess it was less happy fluffy in a way. No one was running around. I was running around improvising songs, but there weren't a lot of people joining me, and it was very clear to me when I was done with that internship. I was like, oh, I'm going back to California. There's no doubt. That is I know they'll be glad to see me again, and there will be a place and a way for me to fit into that structure in a way that I'm happy to do so. And then I took the Mime Troupe workshop again the second summer, and I have no memory of what I did in the intervening year. I don't think I worked with you. No, I did. In 91 was my first year. I replaced Guy Totaro in Uncle.
Uncle, yeah.
Your Uncle.
Right. I remember that, yeah. Yeah, and we did that tour.
So I can't believe I got work with you guys so quickly. That's pretty impressive.
Well, see, that's the thing. People always ask. They're always like, well, how do you get in the collective, and how do you do stuff, and it's like, it's what you said. It's part of it's making yourself indispensable, but in a fun way, not a manipulative way.
Right, or naggy way.
I'm totally the same way. It's like if I want to do something, you know, when I was got out of high school, there were a couple of singing groups that were in our high school. One sang Christmas carols and the other one sang madrigals. And they were money-making gigs. And I knew people like Valina and our friend Connie Dent, people who had beautiful and amazing voices. And I knew that if they went off and started choirs, they wouldn't ask me because I wasn't experienced enough. Yeah. So what I did was I started the choirs. I started them right after high school, and I went out and got costumes. I figured it out, and I was like by far the least experienced. But those groups went on for like a decade. By the end, we were making really good money and winning contests and doing all this stuff. The only reason I stopped was because of the Mime Troupe.
Yeah.
But it was like, and the same with the Mime Troupe. I knew that if I could, this is where I wanted to be, and so if there was a gap or a hole or anything that needed to be done, I could do it. I would say, I can do that. And then eventually people are like, they start relying on you. And so by the time you came back and did that tour, we already knew who you were. You know, we knew you as a person. And we knew that if something came up, you would try.
Oh, yeah. I learned so much. I mean, those early years where it was like I had my fucking headlamp or flashlight and my my tool, my knife tool, what are those called?
Yeah, your Gerber.
My Gerber thing, yeah.
Leatherman, yeah.
I just loved, I was like, I'm ready to go help the Mime Troupe today. I will solve problems. I wanted to loop in one more thing, and that is, you know, my Grateful Dead thing is really no small thing, and I knew about the connection of the Mime Troupe, if not right away, pretty right away. And that was also something that was a connective glue. You know, it was part of my attraction to this really fits into my life.
Oh, I met Phil Lesh a couple of
Recently?
years ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
like 2 years ago. I was introduced to him because I wanted to interview him actually for something like this before this idea came up. And so Michael Bello, who's in the collective now, he's like, "Oh, I'm doing a gig with Lesh's son if you want to come." So I went down to Great American Music Hall, and he took me backstage, and I talked to Phil for an hour.
Yeah, this sounds familiar. Yeah.
I was like, almost would just be squeezing off right now.
Yeah, well, but, you know, usually in those situations, it's usually so stupid. I was at a party with Bob Weir, and it was just one putting my foot in my mouth after the next. I was like, I've got to talk to him. And I was much younger, so it was just dumb.
It's tough, but there's that kind of like, once you get through that and you see, oh, it's just a person. They want to talk about this. They want to talk about shoes. Fine.
Now, Phil actually worked on some compositions for the Mime Troupe back in the day. Before, like, back when they were still, like, in the early days.
Yeah, the early 60s.
When they were doing experimental, before the Commedia phase is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, right. He was in the band for a couple of years. Yeah.
That's cool.
So now once you did, I can't remember now, you did the Uncle tour.
Mm-hmm.
And between that and, was your next show, I can't remember if your next show was it Eating It or was it the Lollapalooza?
No, there was something, hold on a sec. Because I also did stage management.
Oh, and you did Killing Time too.
Yeah, but even before that, so I was assistant director or assistant to the director, whatever you call it, on the first show that I was there for, which was, oh God.
Social Work?
No, After Social Work. What was After Social Work?
Let's see. Right.
It was the one where Dan played Schwarzenegger.
Oh, Back to Normal.
Back to Normal. So I did that. I'm not going to remember the order of everything. I know that I was the stage manager, supposed to be assistant, but Greg was lighting or writing some show up in Napa.
Yeah.
So for Offshore, I was there a lot in the rehearsal process.
Yeah.
That was a little later. I did Siberia was the first show where after some second stage stuff, I think, where I had like 7 or 8 parts or something like that, and I was really a part of the ensemble.
So
because on Uncle, I was mostly backstage, and then I had like 4 lines or something like that.
Yeah, and a top hat. And a mustache? No,
I don't
but a top hat. Now, what were you doing the rest of the year? You were doing the mime troupe in the summer.
I was doing improv. I was doing theater. I got into some plays. I early on, or after a couple of years of eschewing the idea of being a corporate performer, I ended up getting headshots and getting an agent who was not a very good agent, but I got in the late 90s, I got some Nash Bridges and playing music, and then I was seeing as many Grateful Dead shows as I could. And I'd never lived near them or even near where they would go. Like in college, they didn't do a lot of Midwest shows in the winter. They did a lot in the summer, but I wasn't at college in the summer. So unlike a lot of people either on the West or East Coast who were able to see a ton of shows in college, I think I only saw like 8 or 9. And I had to travel far to see them on the weekends and get back to class. It was, and I was a deadhead, but there was a limit to my, giving up on life. But when I got to the Bay Area, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was like, I can go to Cal Expo this weekend. The next weekend, I can go to the Oakland Coliseum. And then the weekend after that, I can go to Shoreline Amphitheater and see 9 Dead shows. Back then, it was $15, $20 a ticket. It was so great, so fun. I spent a lot of time and money doing that. And then
doing what you want to do.
All those festivals, High Sierra, Gathering of the Vibes, Oregon Country Fair. I mean, I was a real head of the music scene. I mean, I did all that stuff. And then not to mention all the local stuff. I mean, through Dred Scott, I got into the local hip-hop jazz scene. And then because of that, because of CB, who was in Alphabet Soup, I found out about the Professionals, and I used to go see them. They used to play I could walk there from my apartment. Oh, it was so great.
So now, during this time, you're playing, and also, when did you start with? At some point, you got into Pickle Family Circus.
Oh yeah, that was through Pat Osborne, who was the general manager of the Mime Troupe. For those who don't know,
how did he work that?
He was doing some stuff for them, or had friends over there, and he's like, "I really want you to meet Tandy Deal. I really think this could be a good thing for you." He was looking out for me. I worked a lot with him in the office. I was the office manager for a long time. Yeah. And I was his guy. And then, he did catering, and he would hire me to do catering gigs too. He was a really stand-up dude. Yeah. Really liked him.
Yeah.
And so I met Tandy. She came out with him and saw the Mime Troupe, and I was in the show that summer, and she got to see me, and then I went and auditioned, and I got a gig. That was 98.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't remember. I just remember the banana eating bit.
Yes. That was one of the skills that I picked up as a youth and turned it into comedy somehow. I am the world's fastest banana eater in the world. Wait, that's redundant. I am the world's fastest banana eater, according to me. I actually, when I lived in San Francisco, was like, I keep saying I'm the world's fastest. I might as well call Guinness and have them send a guy out to time me. They could not have given less of a shit. Like, why would they have the fastest eating?
They have hot dogs.
Whatever it is, or noodles, but they don't care about bananas.
Bastards.
So my dream was quashed.
So you were working with the Pickles and still, and working with the troupe. And then and at some point you did, right before you got into the collective, I think, when you and Victor and those other folks went off to do Lollapalooza.
Oh, God, yeah. That was so bizarre. That was 95. That was right before I left SF and went down to L.A. Or no, maybe it was 96. No, it was 95. And around that time, I also did Shakespeare with Chumley and Bruce and stuff like that, which was awesome. That was a great experience.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, Lollapalooza was strange because you guys were busy creating the summer show. Someone wrote these sketches. I don't think were you involved?
I think I wrote one of them. I think Joan wrote a couple, and
Kate maybe Nina Siegel were involved in that. Kate Chumley. Yeah. And anyways, so there were some youth that were involved. they wrote 4 sketches, and we got there on the ground, and 3 of them just didn't work. It was asking too much of a rock and roll audience, and they might not have been that great of a sketch. The one that was most presentational and could be done holding a mic, that didn't have any blocking, that one worked, and I can't remember what that was about. But we were starving to perform, so we started inventing our own guerrilla theater. And my character was Senator Hatchet, because I'm going to cut the budget. Uh-huh. And I would go around and spew forth my sexist, homophobic rhetoric and see if I could get people to join me in my campaign slogan chant. I'm a racist, sexist, homophobic asshole. And these people would join up. I had dozens and dozens of people screaming that at the top of their lungs, stating my platform, asking if people who agree with me to chant it. And then in the middle of it, Monica, you remember Monica? Was that her name?
Yeah.
Monica?
Yeah.
Black woman.
Yeah.
Short, tight, curly hair. Mm-hmm. She played a homeless woman who came and interrupted and challenged me. I realize that's kind of a weird racist typecasting, but that's what came up out of the 4 of us that were in the van. And she brought the truth, and then Victor, who was a policeman and on his spare time my security, he was also starting a militia, by the way, would then usher her off, and then with a huge, overdrawn, huge, massive padded club would beat the bejesus out of her. And it was very interesting to see when people would cheer or not at that. And then we would try to ask them what they were thinking. And then we also invented the characters Penis Man and Sperm Boy, and we would run around and throw condoms at people. But that was not very political. It was just stupid and fun. And it was amazing to see guys recoil at these 2 cartoon characters. I mean, we looked like Gumby. Mm-hmm. And they would just run away from us. They couldn't touch a man dressed as a penis. They couldn't get near him. Hilarious.
Wow.
But
I wonder how many still have nightmares.
What was that?
I wonder how many still have nightmares.
I doubt it. They were all so fucked up. But I got attacked several times then. I got pushed. I got punched. I got burritos thrown at me. All sorts of stuff thrown at me. I mean, it was, in some ways, the most in-your-face stuff I've ever done, where there were ramifications for my well-being, potentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all felt so bad for you guys.
It was a good experience. I also got, I don't know if I was just dehydrated or got sunstroke, but I ended up on an IV puking my guts out up in Washington State for a day. I couldn't perform that day because we were outside all day.
I think I remembered. Because you guys were up near Columbia Gorge, right? For some reason,
I don't really know where Columbia Gorge is, but we were
I think I visited you guys when you were
we were at the Gorge. Is that Columbia Gorge?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's where we were when I got... Oh, you came out on tour to, direct us or something for a minute?
Yeah.
It's vaguely familiar.
I can't remember. All I remember is I was up there, I saw the Columbia Gorge, I signed up to get some free Doc Martens that never showed up.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I never got mine either. Yeah. So the coolest thing about that tour, though, was befriending the backstage people connected to some of the bands. Mm-hmm. And meeting some of the people was cool. There was a cello player who I had a big crush on in one band. But the roadies for Pavement and some of the guys for Pavement, I used to play ping pong with them and the daycare person for Sonic Youth. And those were really good times and really fun. Yeah. Yeah, and one of the women who was on that is now this massive photographer, and she just released a big film. What's her name? Amber?
Oh, really? Autumn or whatever her name is?
Autumn DeWild.
Oh, really? I always wondered. All I remember is that you guys left her at a gas station.
Yes, we did. No, she just released some big period piece film that's on
cool.
Amazon Prime or...
Is she directing or
she's
photographer?
Directing that, but she's had a really massive career as a photographer primarily, I think. And, she took a lot. She was close with Elliott Smith and took some album covers of his. And
oh, wow. Well, because I remember that she was that, as I recall, there was some concern because she was like hanging out a lot with Beck during the tour or something, and
yeah,
we're like, who is
she.
this?
I think at a certain point she kind of stopped staying with us and going in our van, and just sort of had made her buds in the big tour buses, and
well, it worked out for her.
Yeah. Hey, she had a good time.
Yeah.
And we weren't doing as much as we were supposed to. It was kind of, that money was there from Lollapalooza to pay us to do something, and we were there, and we were trying to do stuff, but we were not as busy as we could have been. So there was lots of time to forge those connections. She forged them with people like Beck and whoever. And she was friends with I think Malcolm is from Pavement, and she was also friends with Courtney Love.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, that must have been weird because that
one
bit that you guys had
what?
You had that one bit of Kurt Cobain's suicide.
Yeah, that didn't go over very well.
I wouldn't think it would have. I don't remember who wrote that. It wasn't me. So when you came back, you end up in the collective for...
Well, after I went to L.A.
Oh, that's right.
In 96, 97, where I studied improv and sketch. Got a few auditions, but not many. A different girlfriend than the one I mentioned earlier broke up with me, so I pined for her and got depressed and came back to the Bay Area, and that's when I joined the collective. That was also the birth that year, 96-ish, 97, was the birth of Cell Space, which I was also I was peripherally heavily involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an ongoing connection between the Mime Troupe and Cell Space for a long time.
Yeah, and we played there periodically, and then that was because of you, too, because you were always saying, we should try to figure out some way to work with Cell Space. And I remember
Chumley developed his own relationship with some youth over there. Like he directed a puppet show they did, and a company out of that space, not Cell Space. But so there was multiple lines of cross-pollination happening.
And I remember when you came back, that was one of the things because when you left, we were like, darn, we were hoping this guy was going to join the collective. So that's why when you came back, we were like, join the collective.
Oh, I feel like I approached Keiko. I don't think she approached me. Did she? I think I let someone know. I was like, I'm into this.
Yeah. But I mean, while you were gone, and talking to people, because we were just like, he could have been one of our guys, but
I didn't know that. That makes me feel good. I didn't know that. I felt like I was kind of being a little bit weaselly, but like by just coming up and saying it baldly rather than waiting for an invitation.
No.
Like I said, it was one of those matches, which is rare. And look, I know I ain't no Michael Gene Sullivan, who's been around for how many years have you been there?
32.
Right. And I know that other people have spent 40 years there or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I did 17, and that's a
lot.
Time. Yeah. I mean, not all as a collective member, but
still.
Maybe it was 16 and a half. But, like, from when I got to the Bay Area in late 90 until the end of 2006. So that's,
that's a long time. I mean, in some ways it can
16.
feel like a couple minutes, but it's also... to have an artistic home for that long is kind of rare.
Yeah, and it really was that. It was that.
Yeah. And when it's right, and then eventually, sometimes, you move on.
Yeah, I needed to do something different. And that started before I moved to Vegas. I mean, I was sort of fading out in 2004, and then I think that was the last time I performed, and then I did a couple years as sort of either or full-on head lyricist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the big gig in Vegas.
The big gig in Vegas. Yeah. I know that was for those of us who didn't go, we were like, damn, almost is leaving. Because you had written some the lyrics for whatchamacallit, Showdown. Which
I did that, and then also the what was the God one?
Oh, Godfellas.
Godfellas. I wrote the rap,
mm-hmm.
and then I wrote something that was heavily edited by Bruce. He may have edited the rap as well. the God damn it. Some of the founding fathers came back to life.
Oh, yeah.
And did a song.
They had a song, yeah, right. Thomas, yeah, Paine and Jefferson.
I don't remember any of the lyrics at all.
You know, it's good. So I put together an anthology of a bunch of Mime Troupe shows, basically from 2000 on, because those are the ones I wrote, and I have the rights to them. And so it was really fun going back and reading through everything. And because I had to go through to reformat it, so I had to read the whole script and read all the lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, and really go, this stuff is funny and good and interesting and different. So you could, if you're ever interested, you can get that. It's like on iTunes Books. It's just
great.
free. You can just download it. It's got pictures.
Oh, really? Yeah, I
have
to have that.
Yeah.
I have the other one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, my plan was to do it, because we were always trying to figure out how do we do it. Do we do it by decade? Do we do it by writer? And so what I decided to do was start doing it by who's the president. And so I did the Bush-Obama years. And then I was like, okay, now I can work, instead of trying to start at the beginning, I want to try to work backwards, you know, to do the Clinton-Bush years, you know. So it ends up being about 12 years each time, or,
That's
you know,
cool.
8 or 12. So we'll see how that works out. But so when you got your big chance to go to Vegas, and I remember that, because that was a long process.
Oh, it was bullshit. Yeah.
That audition and everything.
The audition, I remember, you know, Victor and I and my friend Peter went to Europe and busked as the Bastard Brothers, which was really fun, and was just so beyond. It was one of those things where it's like, we could go there and this could really suck. And the first time you go out and you busk and no one gives a shit and you don't get any money, you're like, oh, this is a really bad idea. And then you figure out not only how to do it, but where to go and what types of places, what time, and you change your material up a little bit, and it starts to work. And then you start making connections in the community. And then things just got wild, like in Germany for us and stuff like that. Anyways, we came back, and I think, did Victor audition too? I think he might have. I can't remember. But the audition was right then. And that was like 2003, August, September of 2003, I think. And I passed the audition. You know, it was like a 12-hour grueling audition. And then if you passed that and you stayed, you went down to Stanford the next day and you did a swimming test and a diving test, just so I could see how you were.
Right, because it was a water circus thing.
Yeah, it's a water spectacle like O at the Bellagio. Yeah, so I passed that as well, although I did something really stupid there, if you want to hear that story. But
yeah.
But I made it to their database. I didn't actually get the part until John Gilkey, who was the clown creation guy, who's a Bay Area, pickle guy. But he was the guy working for Franco Dragone, to do the clown stuff. He saw the Dick and W show and was reminded of me, which was a show I did with Ed Holmes. He was Cheney to my Bush, and I got cast then. But yeah, so when I went to Stanford, I mean, I have been a water guy all my life. I like diving and going in tunnels underneath. You remember when we used to go up
the Yuba River?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, we got to go. You got to follow. The locals showed me this, and you would dive down in the rocks until in these boulders until you saw light, and then you would swim up towards the light. And I thought it was so thrilling. And I also love jumping from high places, which we also did up there.
Yeah. And
so I went down, and everybody's jumping off. You know, there's the three. How many? I don't know what it is. At an Olympic
like the
pool,
5 meter, 15, or whatever.
Right. So everybody's jumping off the low one, and I'm like, fuck that shit. I'm going up to the top, and I'm not jumping. I'm diving. This is that's like 20 feet. I don't know how high that is. No, it's high.
Yeah.
What's the
like
tallest
10
part
meters or something? I don't know.
Jesus fucking Christ. So you're supposed to dive off, do a somersault, and then swim to the edge of the pool, just to show that you can handle that. And, you know, I've been jumping. I've never done a dive from that high. I don't know what possessed me, hubris. So I dive, and hitting the water from that height head first was extremely painful. I didn't hurt anything. I didn't get injured, but I was shocked. I did the somersault and then just lost it, and I had to come up. And then, like an idiot, I'm like, I think I'll jump this time. And I went back up and jumped and passed the exercise fine. But I made an absolute idiot of myself.
Well, you also showed them that you were willing to jump from that high.
Oh, yeah.
So it depends.
It wasn't a problem jumping from that height, but diving was a little bit more that I knew was good for me.
Okay, so then you leave the troupe, the teary goodbye of Amos, and then you go off to Vegas.
Yeah.
And journey.
You brought up the turmoil of it, which is that I failed my drug test.
Right.
They make you take a drug test, and I failed it, and I couldn't for the life of me, even though I like the Grateful Dead and have done my fair share of partying, hadn't really been partying at that time because I had been on a film. And I had been sick during that shooting and everything. I'd been pretty good. In any case, I found out that the company that I took the test with they sell an at-home kit. So I took that, and the results were that I failed for cocaine, which I hadn't done in the longest time. Like, I'm not a big coke guy, and I had done it a couple times, but I hadn't done it for years. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then I realized that I must have failed. It must have been triggered by those behind-the-counter decongestants you get.
Yeah.
When I was sick on this film, I pounded. Like, I took way more of those than you're supposed to because I was afraid that my voice was going to change in the film.
Right.
And they must have triggered it. But I don't know why it came up cocaine rather than amphetamine, because that's what it is. But that was a fun delay. So that was in December, and I ended up – no, sorry, that was before Thanksgiving. And I didn't end up going until January. I remember it was January 10th, I believe, of 2007. And I went on a 6-week contract, and I stayed for 9 years.
Well, were you the last clown standing on that show?
No. What's really great is that, so much shit went down. So, like, when the economy tanked, anybody who made a certain amount of money or more got brought down to a certain level. So I got my pay cut then.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they constantly, the big thing about Reve is that everybody, the higher ups, people who owned the show, not people who created it, but the casino, they just kept wanting to cut the clown stuff and make it as facile and stupid and watered down as possible. And then we would get new material and we'd change it, it would become funnier and funnier, and they go, can't do that anymore. And so by the time I got to the point where I was losing my pay, I wasn't doing as much as I was in 9 scenes when I first got there. I was in like 3 or 4 by the time this shit hit the fan with the economy and stuff, which was actually pretty soon after I got there, because it was like 2008 and I got there in 2007. But it must have been later when the axe got cut down to that point. But anyways, at another point, they came to me and said, now we're going to take you down. We're not just evening you off at this nice high plateau. We're going to take $25,000 out of your paycheck. And I was making a lot of money, but and I was like, oh really? That's what you're going to do? And I said, well, then I don't want to be on a contract anymore. I will work for you at will, so that I can do whatever I want, because these contracts have a non-competition clause. Technically, I'm not even supposed to take a meeting or an audition while I'm working there. And certainly can't do any other job unless it's something local or special and I get permission. But I can't change career paths without their permission until my contract is up. And so I told them I would work up to 4, even 5 days a week, but with complete flexibility, so that I could do film festivals, gallivant about, do whatever I wanted. And they came back and said, we'll give you 2.5 days a week. You're going to split a 5-day week with another performer. So I lost the basically $25,000, and then the remaining of my money was cut in half because I went from 5 days a week to 2.5 days a week. And it was still enough money to pay my mortgage and do whatever I needed to do. It was incredible. That's how cheap it is to live in Vegas.
Wow, that sounds great. And I know, and you were. Did you start doing You started doing some? Was it an online show or some kind of?
No, I
television.
I did a late night variety show.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
In Las Vegas. I started doing it at this place that I found out eventually was a front for the mafia.
That's just called Las Vegas, I think.
They were really cool guys, actually, and they really liked me. I mean, they didn't need to make money. It was a money laundering thing for them, so it didn't matter. And I brought in money on the night because my audience drank like fishes. And I started doing these, just real loose variety shows, and they got better and better, and I got better as a host, and I got way more discerning, and I started writing transitions and stuff like that, and inventing stuff that would happen that would almost be thematic throughout a show with if I'm the host, the MC I would bring in would be we would have something would happen. Like one night we got kidnapped by these ridiculous clowns, the host and the MC. And we got abused and beaten, all to hilarious effect. Stuff like that. So it got really fun and creative. And I did that the whole time I was there until, up until almost to the very end. Yeah, because the last one I did was a fundraiser for the film I was making at the time, my short film.
Mm-hmm. So what was your short film?
It is called A Man Wakes Up.
Mm-hmm.
Currently viewable on XOTV on my channel, Amos Glick, and it's also on Shorts TV, that's a satellite subscription. It's a channel on all over the world on certain subscription packages. I have no idea where, but you can go to their website and figure it out.
Cool.
And it was a short film that won a bunch of awards at festivals in 2015 and 16, and it's a live action film, but there's no dialogue, and it kind of harkens back to where we started talking about that whole, those films that I watched, the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers, the ones that I was watching were the short little serial things they made that they showed. They weren't the big films with sound. They were all silent.
Huh.
My film wasn't silent, but my film, I think that Jacques Tati is closer style-wise to what my film is like, as far as there's other people, lots of people talking and doing their shtick, and then there's Jacques Tati doing his ridiculousness in the middle of it.
Right. Like Envelope Boy.
That was kind of a pivotal moment in realizing that I could, purely as a physical comedian, without any dialogue, could hold the stage. And you directed that to great effect. That was something that I wish we had videotape of that.
I do too.
We should shoot that film.
Yeah. Yeah, it was such a fun thing. It was so much fun.
I'm so glad I asked you to do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
that was a perfect little marriage. And then everything came together perfectly for that, because my friend Rob Penn, remember, was the singer, who's a really good singer, was doing live improvised opera off stage based on my physicality. So, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very cool.
People seem to like it,
it did really well. The audience loved it. It was so unexpected, and you held the tension of them with just you sitting there opening, just dealing with the letters and then having the one weird one. Yeah, it was great. It was great. Sometimes I do just go, man, we should have filmed it. Why didn't we film? But those were those days. So when you came down to your last days at Lorette,
you asked. Yeah. So the whole thing about that was, I explained, and that's why I was talking about all the money stuff. It was I kind of, and the acts being cut, I kind of had it up to here. I had a knee operation. I was like, I had written and done my film, and I knew that I did that because I wanted to have a calling card for LA. I wanted to come to LA with something beyond my resume, which is, no slouchy resume, but I wanted to have this thing that was fresh. And so I gave notice, and literally a week later, you hear over the loudspeaker, all clowns to the upstairs room, all clowns to the upstairs room. And I knew that I didn't have to go because I was done.
You're out the door.
And they came back from that meeting. They were all depressed. And they were like, you got out just in the nick of time. They were given their termination date at that meeting. We're writing the clowns out of the show. By the end of this contract, you will no longer have a job here.
Wow.
What is of course, them being what?
What is a circus without clowns?
Well, they gave the very few comedic acts that they had left to other performers who, some of them are funny and some of them aren't. But they didn't want the big humor. They think that Reve is best as this flashy piece of brilliance. But I think it's become way more boring, and it's more like watching a Disney epic water show. There's a whole huge thing in the middle of the show now, which is just water going off to sound cues and bursts of flames, and and fake fireworks filmed. It's just like, why would you pay $75 to see something like that?
No, never. So now when you left Vegas and you've got your calling card of your film and you moved to LA, now you'd lived there for a year before.
Well, 7 or 8 months, yeah.
7 or 8 months. So it wasn't a huge shock.
No.
And you came with some money.
I came with a fair amount of money, and I don't know, maybe I should have saved it. I didn't. I lived off of it. And I really made it last a long time. I still have some left actually, but it was, I'm 52, so I'm no young spring chicken. I was not going to go work wasn't going to get a job at Starbucks. I would have wanted to die. And I really beat the pavement for work. I mean, just anything like office work, stuff that I, sent out a ton of resumes to theaters and places that needed people to handle front of house or whatever for their theaters or showrooms or whatever. I couldn't even get an interview. I mean, LA is so competitive. And then, so I moved here in 2000, and then February of 2016, and by the time the pandemic hit, so that was, what year are we in? 2020, right? So that was exactly 4 years. In the last year is when I really finally started to figure it out. Like I made real money last year just from piecing it together, getting a couple TV shows, working on some stuff, other films and projects behind the scenes, doing a crappy delivery job that I hated, but I had to, doing production work, both for music videos, for fashion shoots, commercials, whole bunch of stuff, teaching, and it was great. And then the pandemic hit. I was booking, I was auditioning, I was making money, and then everything got shut down.
Yeah.
And I was ripe to really lose my shit mentally, except that my old friend who I lived with in the Bay Area called me up and says, you want a job? And now I'm working full-time with benefits in my house.
Cool.
1 second, my cat.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
There was did you get a gig last summer? I'm trying to remember. We were in touch at one point last summer, and I thought that there was something that happened, and you were like, yay, I got this thing, and I can't remember what it was.
There were a couple of neat things. Once I left Vegas, I kept getting called back to Vegas, once to shoot an independent film, which is coming out soon, and I get to play the kind of my take on, do you remember the guy who would be like, yes? I mean, I'm not quite that goofy, but I have a little pencil-thin mustache, and I'm a very persnickety person. It was really fun. But anyways, I got to do that. I got to do, do you know who Pip the Magic Dragon is? He's been on America's Got Talent. He's currently on he's a magician, but he says he's a dragon, and he's a frumpy British guy in a dragon costume with a little chihuahua in a dragon costume. And he's he's very good. He's very funny. And so he had a Christmas show, and I was a replacement squire for his Christmas show. I went back in Vegas to that. That producer hired me to go on this tour, which was fucking hilarious. This was the closest I've gotten to Monty Python. It was a British production of Graham, which is how they pronounce Graham over there, Game of Thrones. And it was a parody of Game of Thrones, and it was nonstop stupidity from the opening curtain till the end. Just so much fun. I think I played, it was like being in the Mime Troupe again. I think I played probably 20 characters or something like that.
Wow.
Some of them were just me holding up a puppet from behind a curtain and saying something and throwing the puppet out and then coming out as a different character, and that was 2.
Where did you guys tour?
Oh, God, all over the Eastern Seaboard. I met them. I was a replacement actor on that. There was an Irish guy in the cast who had actually been on Game of Thrones, a working actor over there, and he had an opportunity to work with a stage director who he really wanted to. So he's like, I got to quit. I'm sorry, guys, but I got to. Producer remembered me from the Piff show, brought me over. I met them in D.C., and we went up as far north as like a part of New York. I can't remember what town, but that's close to like Canada. Hold on, I got to close the door.
Okay. Cats.
My housemate's making noise.
Or cats.
So that was really fun.
Wow.
We did New York City. We did Princeton. We did Cornell. If you look on my Facebook page, there's a picture of me in front of the Cornell gymnasium, because there's a very famous Grateful Dead show from 1977 at that particular place. And so it's a very cryptic way for people who are Uber fans know exactly what I'm doing there.
Oh, cool. So, yeah, then the pandemic hits and nothing.
Oh, the other thing was Romania.
Oh, what'd you do in Romania?
Oh, come on. I must have talked to you about Romania when I came back for the 60th or whatever. A friend of mine from Reve, who's Romanian and kind of grew up working and studying at this one particular circus, the National Circus. They call it the National Circus, but it's in Bucharest and it's stationary. But he became like this. He somehow finagled his way into being the artistic director of their new show. Oh, they had a big fire in their warehouse where some of their animals lived, and a bunch of the animals died, and all the animal activists in Romania put the pressure on them to no longer have animals in their shows, because they're very, very traditional, old school, almost Russian style circus, and communist era stuff.
Yeah.
And like these guys came into fruition. The circus really got built up during the communist era. People are just on retainer, and they just come in there and train and do their act, same act they've been doing for 30 years, and they stick around until they have need to be in a show, and they get a costume and they do the show. And they just get paid their wage every day. So this guy brought in a bunch of people from Le Reve, a bunch of performers who turned creators, and created a show. Now, I came in late in the game, and when I got there, I realized that basically this guy was copying Le Reve, almost act for act.
Wow.
If not, it was really bizarre, and it was a large source of conflict for he and I, and he threatened to fire me several times. But in the end, I was brought in to do, specifically the clown act creation, but I also said I'll come if you let me be ensemble acting, cirque style acting coach and ensemble builder. So I did that as well, and utilized a lot of stuff that I learned at the Mime Troupe and over the years. And it was a shit show. It was a complete shit show for so many reasons.
When were you doing this? How long ago was this?
This was November of 2017. No, so what am I saying? July through 2017 through November. So I was there for 4 months. I lived in Bucharest. And, there were some really cool experiences and cool things, but I was I was definitely, it was a sink or swim thing for me. I didn't know what I was doing as far as being a clown act creator, and I was definitely over my head. Got rescued by a really good friend who I knew was coming, and that was the only way I would have gone. And he, I had put a lot of work into it. He came and kind of pushed us into the realm of where we could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Then he had to leave, and I finished it up, and I was really happy with what these clowns came up with. I mean, one of our clowns was like 65 years old. Other ones were like 19, 20. We had 5 or 6 of them. And through auditions, we found this girl who was just hilarious, a tap dancer and actor, but she's not a clown. But we made her one, and it was brilliant. It was really great.
Wow. Well, that sounds... Yeah, no, you did. I don't think you told me about that. We didn't. I mean, when we did the 60th, there was a lot of stuff going on.
Oh my God, yeah. You had your plate full, and then a lot of stuff happened on top of that.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was fun. I'm glad we did it, and it was a great night, but it had its things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's about all the time we have.
Cool.
These interviews, no matter what, they always end up about an hour and a half long. This one is like an hour 40.
Well, I ramble, I'm sure.
No. But it's great. I mean, it's like I said, I'm asking a lot of long questions.
No, it's a fun way to just talk about stuff without, and like you said, without it just specifically being about the mime troupe and stuff.
Yeah, and I've gotten to know people so much better, which has been really interesting. I did not know you were born in Texas, just to get to know people and go, and it just makes everything just deeper. And getting to know my so talented friends that much more. And sometimes, like with you, people that I may only talk to a couple times a year, if that.
That's true.
So it's nice. But anyway, that's it for this episode of the MimeCast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys learn more about Amos Glick, and you can check out his website and his Facebook page to see the short films that he's been working on and all of his clowning, and hopefully more stuff will come up very soon. So, Deadhead till the end.